If I could only use one TV show to represent my childhood, I would probably choose My Little Pony. While I assume most people have heard of it, if you've never seen the show, it's quite simple to understand. It's a typical episodic show about the lives of 6 ponies being friends and occasionally stopping enemies with the use of magic. This show carried my childhood. The characters' bright colors and contrasting personalities were all that I needed to keep me watching. Obviously, many other children felt the same, as the show got 9 seasons, a movie, tons of toys, some of which I owned, games, merchandise, and an entire separate spin-off franchise. This spin-off franchise was called EQUESTRIA Girls. The first EQUESTRIA Girls movie released in 2013, and you could clearly tell Hasbro was trying to chase the popularity of other recent doll franchises at the time. The movie featured each of the main ponies as human teenage girls. This first movie was so successful that Hasbro made 3 more movies, 6 specials, several separate series shorts, and even music videos. At this point, EQUESTRIA Girls was its own separate series for My Little Pony. A common discussion among the EQUESTRIA Girls franchise are the character designs. While I know children don't mind, I definitely didn't, many argue that these designs don't represent the characters well. It has become a very big trend among art social media to redesign each character to better reflect their styles, and this is exactly what I plan to do today. When redesigning the EQUESTRIA Girls characters, I kept 3 things in mind. First, I wanted to keep them as high schoolers. Many people I see redesign the girls often age them up into college students, which is fine, but this is an alternate universe from the main pony world. In my opinion, just because they're adults in one world doesn't mean they need to be adults in another. Second, I want to incorporate each cutie mark into each design. This is personally my favorite part of the original EQUESTRIA Girls outfits. It acts as a nice nod to the original ponies. And third, I wanted to keep these designs personal to me. I'm not redesigning each character for a TV show, and I'm definitely not redesigning them professionally. Each drawing just represents how I would picture each character in my own style. When drawing Twilight, it was important for me to keep her general academic vibe, which I think the show does wonderfully. Referring back to the idea of keeping them all high schoolers, I do think my version of Twilight would feel very fish out of water. In the first movie, she clearly struggles with being in a school, and I feel like it could be a very fun aspect to explore further. The movie rarely shows her in the actual school space. Twilight even manages to spend the night in the library because she has nowhere to stay and no one minds. She is somehow referred to as a student, but never once is forced to go to class. It's a silly thing to point out, but it was something that always bothered me when I watched these movies. Twilight was the only design I gave an actual backpack, and while this is a very corny design choice, I did have the silly idea to include her pony wings on the back of the bag. I think it would be a nice nod to the fact that out of these 6 characters, Twilight is the only one who's a real pony and not a human. I did struggle in how I wanted to pose her and show the bag at the same time. Initially, I thought it was cute to have her turned away from the viewer with her backpack on full display, and then I realized that kind of just defeats the whole purpose of the design. You're unfortunately not supposed to cover up the details on a drawing like this. Incorporating her cutie mark was the biggest struggle for me. At first it was on her bag, but I realized it looked very out of place. When sketching, I debated just giving her a pin with the same shape, but when finishing the design, I realized I could just turn into a pattern in her sweater vest, and I think this does a great job of keeping it subtle. In conclusion, I think Twilight has a very solid redesign. I believe I did a great job at making it look like her original self while still putting my own personal touch into every part of it.
Well, since you asked, the answer is no!
I'd say Rarity might be my most hot take out of all the designs. I see most people make her incredibly flashy, which is definitely Rarity, but I doubt she'd look like this in a high school setting. I took a lot of inspiration from everyday high schoolers. They dress nice, but comfortably enough to get through the day, and I think this is a perfect translation how Rarity would represent herself in a school setting. My version of her would obviously go more over the top outside of school, making herself flashier for events and parties. I do, however, wish I put a greater effort into the fashion designer aspect of her character. She doesn't need to look flashy to get that idea across, but if I were to redo her, I would definitely show more of that in her design. Items like a notebook of sketches or random sewing supplies on her person, it's the small stuff like that that just makes it such a big difference on how the viewer reads the design. Anyways, I do still stand with the simplicity of her outfit. Fitting in does mean a lot to Rarity, and in a modern day high school, this is pretty much how I've seen most people dress. I think it would be fun to explore her expressing herself more in everyday outfits as the movies progress. As she gets closer and closer with the other girls, she finds herself enjoying herself more than enjoying the difficulties of fitting in. For her cutie mark, I opted to just use subtle diamonds around her. She has a diamond charm on her cell phone, which I choose to believe she uses often in class. The other diamond is on her necklace, which I think is just another nice accessory I've seen in high school. Overall, I really enjoy how Rarity turned out. I'm aware her design is likely unique to the flashier ones I've seen others make, but I do still really like how I made her look.
I believe they're famished for fashion. Well, actually, they do want me to regurgitate worms into their beaks.
To me, Fluttershy has a very nature/witchy core vibe to her, like the stuff you'd find in the back of a present-day Hot Topic. This fashion style really represents Fluttershy's aesthetic to me, and I think she'd have a lot of fun expressing her interest through fashion. Like everyone else, I opted to keep her looking comfortable. Fluttershy definitely cares less about how she's perceived fashion-wise, but I think she puts a great effort into not making herself stand out, wearing what she likes without going too over the top. I decided to have her looking anxious when posing her. I'm not exactly sure where these movies would take place on the movie timeline, but at the beginning of the first movie, Fluttershy seems slightly more shy than usual. If you know the movies, all the girls seemingly hate each other until Twilight helps mend their friendships. I want her skirt to be the central part of her design. Knowing Fluttershy, I think she'd be the kind of person to put it together herself, likely to reuse fabrics from clothes that don't work for her anymore. When finding a place for her cutie mark, I thought it made the most sense to put it on the fabric of her skirt. It was already a compilation of different colors and textures, so it didn't feel out of place for a random butterfly pattern to appear. In conclusion, I enjoy what I did to Fluttershy, but I think I could have definitely incorporated more of the aesthetics into her design. I always opt to keep my design simple, but I think the witch core that inspired me really benefits from more complexity and accessories, so I would definitely add more of that if I were to design her again.
You can model the latest trend with shape chic.
I'd never wear a dodecahedron.
If you go to school anywhere near flat and open American fields like I do, you've likely seen people dressed very country-like in school. 90% of the people I knew lived in suburbia, until I'd occasionally meet someone who owned pigs and horses back home. This is the exact vibe I got from Applejack. While she of course lives on an apple farm and not one full of animals, she's still a country girl. I think in school, Applejack would obviously choose to keep her outfits more simple, but the cowboy hat and boots are likely a staple in her everyday look. She cares more about function over fashion, and the boots look comfortable. A common critique of the EQUESTRIA Girls designs is how every character is wearing a skirt. While it makes sense when translating them into dolls, it's very easy to wrap a skirt around a piece of plastic than to put pants on it. It just makes the designs look too samey and unrealistic for the characters. I think Applejack suffers the most from this. Even when looking at stereotypical country girl photos when designing her, I rarely saw people ever wearing denim skirts. Which makes sense. Short skirts can just be very impractical when you're planting trees in a field. I really liked how the original Applejack design put her cutie mark on her boots, so I decided to steal that. I also chose to put it on a belt buckle, slightly taking inspiration from the country boys I've seen at my own high school. Now that it's done, I think Applejack might be my favorite of the redesigns. It just feels very her, and I feel as if I did a good job of balancing her aesthetics and keeping it realistic to high school.
Classic? You mean like...
My Pinkie Pie design is very similar to every other one I've seen. Unlike Rarity, Pinkie Pie often doesn't care about how she's perceived. And while my design has a lot of color unity, I know she'd often wear colors and patterns that don't match at all. Pinkie definitely has my favorite OG design, but it also feels way too childish for high school. Mine also might be too far in the other direction, and it might be a bit unrealistic for a high school student. But Pinkie Pie as a whole is a character who stands out a lot from the crowd, so I hope it fits her even in a school setting. I took a lot of inspiration from Decora Fashions that designed her. I was a huge fan of how people cluttered tons of accessories with bright colors into their outfits. Mine is obviously very toned down and simple, but I can really see Pinkie going all out, either as she gets older or even just when going out with her friends. When placing her cutie mark, I almost put it on her skirt, but I wanted to avoid doing that twice. So instead, I gave her balloon earrings to keep it simple. Pinkie Pie is definitely the kind of character would be really easy to put the balloons on any article of clothing, so if I were to design different outfits for her, I'd try exploring putting it in different places. Overall, I think she's a very strong design that matches her overall character. If I were to redo it, I'd either push the design to looking more like a typical high schooler or further into the decor aesthetic. I feel like right now it's just a simple middle ground. Either way, I do feel as if it looks like the character fairly well.
I'm gonna hide in Pinkie's locker and scare her when she—
Rainbow Dash was probably the easiest design to put together. In the first movie, she's described as the captain of every sports team in their school, so I obviously had to keep it athletic. To me, Rainbow Dash would definitely avoid excessive accessories or popular fashion. She would prioritize comfort and clothes with easy movement. This meant I gave her the simplest basketball shorts and a tank top. I also opted to give her a Letterman jacket, as it's been the stereotypical symbol for any athletic character for as long as I can remember. I do think I could have put a greater effort into decorating her Letterman, however. Many of my friends' jackets were covered in pins and badges and everything they earned for being involved. And since Rainbow Dash is literally the captain of every sports team, she would have the things to decorate her jacket with. When putting together her redesign, I came across a lot of Billie Eilish outfits that I personally believe very well represent how I picture Rainbow Dash's fashion sense. I decided to keep the simple athletic clothes instead, but I think out of school, or even in later movies, she would choose to express herself in a more masculine and tomboy way that I think Billie does really well. Rainbow Dash's cutie mark placement was a no-brainer. I gave her a Letterman jacket, so it was obviously to turn her cutie mark into a patch on said jacket. It ended up working really well and matching the jacket's colors perfectly. I think my Rainbow Dash design is one of the best out of these. I think the simplicity of my art style works really well and my favorite this time around. I also feel like I'd have a really great time working on an out-of-school design for her eventually if I ever return to these characters. Working on these designs was very fun for me to do. I can't remember the last time I made this many designs back to back, let alone fully line and render them all like this. My favorite part of redesigning existing characters is trying to transform them in a way that improves their original design while still making it look realistic to the character. I always have an issue with people who redesign characters into something that doesn't feel like the original whatsoever. I really hope I did a good job with my own designs and I'm not blinded by my personal bias. If you have any opinions on these designs and would like to share them, be free to do so down below. I'm always open to a constructive critique, as long as you're not rude about it. Hope you enjoyed watching, and I hope to see you again next time. We talked a lot.